In Texas, where I grew up, we had a statement, a colloquial saying that we understand what it means. I don't know if you were not blessed enough to be born in Texas, you might not understand this. But when you disagreed with somebody, or someone was kind of being antagonistic, or maybe they were an enemy to you, and you wanted to tell them to go away, or maybe you wanted to use something a little more vulgar about going someplace, what you would do in Texas is you would say, well, I think you need to just go jump in the lake. And I always thought that was a funny thing to say out in West Texas, because there weren't too many lakes I knew of that you could go jump in. As a little boy, I was like, but what lake are we going to go jump in? I don't know, there's no lake out here. Yeah, go jump in the lake, you know. And as I grew up and started studying all kinds of things and got into seminary and started studying scriptures and started looking at linguistic issues and things, and one of the things I did was study where certain sayings came from. And that saying, go jump in the lake, do you know where that actually originated from? Do you know where that really came from? It came from this 5th chapter of Mark, which is our passage for today. It's a story, of course, in which these demonic spirits that were in this horrible demon-possessed man, in essence, asked to be sent into this herd of pigs. And the pigs, once they are filled with this demonic spirit, what did they do? They went and jumped in the lake, you see, and drowned. And so that's where that expression, go jump in the lake, comes from. It's an old Protestant way of saying, go drown yourself. Not really nice to say that to people, but that's where it comes from. It comes from that idea of the pigs jumping into the lake because they were filled with these demons. Well, you know, it is the 21st century of our time, and the word demon doesn't fit very well in our language these days. We're all technical, we're all scientific, we're all objective. And to speak of demons is kind of a strange thing. And not many people really understand what demons are. We have artistic representations of them which do not help anything at all. They are turned into these little figures with pointy head horns and little stings to stab people with, and they're always red looking, you know. And these were demons in the days of Jesus and earlier days. They understood them to be little creatures that lived behind rocks and in the dark at night, and they could inhabit people and make them do bad things. And so demons were a very big problem for them because they knew their world was filled with evil, and they knew their world was filled with all kinds of people doing all kinds of bad things that they should not be doing. So they needed an explanation for it. And so they came up with this idea. They are demon-possessed. That was the way they spoke about them in the 1st century A.D. But it is the 21st century, you know, and we've learned a lot of things about life and reality and nature and all of that. And generally those ancient ideas don't fit too well with modern understandings. So we really need to have a good understanding of who the demons are and what it means to say that we are demon-possessed, but to understand it in a more 21st century way, because that's where we live and that's where we exist as far as our life is concerned. So how are we going to describe demons in the 21st century? You know, it wasn't too long ago we had movies like The Exorcist and these people throwing up green pea soup all over the place. That was a picture of what demons look like. But there's really a much more accurate and more excellent understanding of demons. And what we're talking about is motivators, motivations. Yeah. Human beings don't do anything unless they are motivated to do it. They have to have a motivation. And a motivation comes from the idea of movement. That's where motivation comes from. And a spirit has to do with movement. You know, in the day of Jesus, you went across the ocean, but you went across the ocean by the wind pushing your boat's sails that way. It's a spirit and the wind were the same words. And so a demonic spirit was something inside of you that motivated you to do evil things. Now, of course, we have to take that a little further and a little deeper. We need to look at what it is that motivates us to do those kinds of things. And the more we've looked at it, the more we have discovered that it's actually an internal thing that every human being has within them. In our modern age, we have learned about the thing which we call the ego, which is the sum total of our mind, our heart, and all of our physical desires put together in one entity, and we call it nowadays our self. That's what we call it. We say, this is my self. I have a self, you have a self, everybody has a self. And what motivates us is that self. And it motivates us to do one thing, basically, and that is to survive. You see, if you live a human life, it's very important to you to survive. Because if you don't survive, you're dead. So it's pretty important to survive. And we tend to live that way. We are motivated to survive somehow or another. And of course, talking about survival, you can barely survive or you can survive well. And as our human self continues to motivate us and lead us through our lives, we get this idea that life is about surviving well, that we want to live a good human life, that we want our flesh to be taken care of, and we want everything that we can get to make our flesh feel better, to make it feel more loved, to make it feel more accomplished. We look for all of these things that will enable us to feel like we are surviving well in this world. And all of that comes from the combination of our ego, our heart, our mind, everything that makes us into who we are. It's our self. And so we have discovered now in the 21st century that man pretty much lives according to himself. That's how we really live. Everybody has their own ideas of what they need to do and how they need to live and what they should be about. And everything seems to be okay with that. Everybody seems to be okay with that. That's how you live your life. You make your decisions, you do your thing, you go here, you go there, and it's all directed by yourself. And all of those things that are directed by yourself are described in the Scriptures as being demonic. And why are they demonic? What's wrong with that? What's wrong with living for yourself? What's wrong with taking care of your stuff? What's wrong with all of that? What's wrong with it is there's one big thing missing, and that is the presence of God, you see. You can be led by your ego, or you can be led by God. But if you have chosen to be led by your ego, yourself, and your human way of life, then you are not being led by God and God's way of life, and that is demonic in the 21st century as well as it was in the first century. If you want to know why this world is so dark and filled with so many evil and bad things going on, it's because people have been motivated by their self to live a selfish life. And it may not be a real greedy life where they're trying to save a bunch of money and build up a bunch of wealth. No, it's just living for yourself. It's deciding that your needs and your situation is more important than anybody else's. And that leads to a broken world. That leads to a world that has no more community in it. And that leads to a world where it's every man for himself, so to speak. And all those motivations for self-gratification, motivations for self-prosperity, motivations for self-righteousness, motivations for self-health, motivations for whatever it is you are motivated for, whatever they are, those are the demons we're talking about. Because every one one of them is motivating you to do that which yourself wants to have done, not necessarily God wants to have done. If, on the other hand, you are living out of the Spirit of God, and that Spirit motivates you to do a certain thing, either for yourself or others, that's a whole different story. So the real question is, who's motivating you? And what's motivating you is your ego, your mind, and your heart. The sum total of all your experiences, your circumstances, and situations in this life. All of that adds up to who yourself is. Yourself needs to survive and do what is in its best interest. And that's the evil spirits that we have to watch out for. Because those are the evil spirits that break up everything that's meaningful. Relationships, families, communities, nation against nation, you name it. When we start living for ourselves, the world turns into hell on earth. Not heaven on earth, for sure. And so we have to be aware of these demonic influences within us that all come from the fact that we are flesh. Someone once asked me, why does the flesh want to survive? Well, because if it doesn't, it dies. Something that's eternal doesn't have to worry about survival because it's going on forever and ever and ever. But if you're made out of flesh, no matter how hard you try, you're not going to survive this world. Nobody's going to survive this world. But you want to survive as long as you can and as well as you can. And that's to be led by a demonic spirit. So what we find in this story then today is Jesus encounters this man who is possessed with these evil spirits. And he is totally out of control, meaning he has no centralized God control life that enables him to understand the big picture and how he fits into it. Instead, what he has is all of these impulses, all of these desires. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to have this. I want to have that. And those have torn him apart and made him extremely upset about the fact that he can't get everything he wants and he can't have the kind of life he wants. And so he screams and he cuts himself and he's out of control because his life is not going the way he wants it to go. And he's got so many ideas and desires about how he wants it to go. So he's broken into lots of different motivations that are destroying him. Kind of sounds like our world today and the people who live in our world today. We have so many more things going on in our world now than they did 2,000 years ago. So many more choices. I can remember when I was growing up in the 50s, 60s, we had 3 TV channels and that was it. ABC, NBC, CBS. You didn't have anything else. They say now you've got possibilities of 3,000 to 4,000 channels. You could sit there and flip channels all the rest of your life and never stop looking at everything. Yeah, this world is becoming so filled with so many distractions, so many different things we can get interested in, so many ways we can go. And every one of them pulls at our self-awareness and makes us want to do something that we want to do, which adds to the destruction and the disruption and the disunity in our societies. So these demonic spirits then are very powerful. Matter of fact, actually they cause our entire world to be filled with darkness. But a question comes up, why are they so powerful? Why don't we just say, forget about it. Just don't live for yourself anymore. Just live for others. Very simple, not hard. Just forget about it. Well, human race can't seem to do that. And I think the reason why is in this story, when Jesus asks the man, what is your name? He says, my name is Legion. And it's the Spirit speaking. It's the demonic spirits that are speaking through him. My name is Legion. Now in those days, what was a legion? A legion was 1,000 Roman stormtroopers. That's what a legion was. And the Roman army had approximately 42 legions. That's 42,000 soldiers who had been trained to kill, maim, and destroy. And they were strong men also. And so when he says, I'm a legion, that means I've got at least 1,000 demons in me, if not more. And this is the problem. If we only had one demon, well, we could probably kick that one out pretty quick. Go away, go away. But when you're facing 1,000 demons, that's a lot of demons. What are you going to do about it? And what humanity has tried to do, which is the wrong solution, of course, is we have tried to get rid of our demons one demon at a time. Now, it's just not going to happen that way. There are too many of them. Now, I can remember when I was attempting to become a vegetarian because of my health issues back when I was a young man, and ate barbecue like there was no end, and fat meat like there was no end. And I had cholesterol coming out of my eyes, and the doctor says, you know, it's time for you to quit that. Well, I had to quit eating meat, and I had to quit eating red fat meat, which I loved, barbecue. You know, I'm Texas. What are you going to do, you know? But I had to quit that, and I had a hard time quitting it. I just really couldn't quit try. Got to have that steak, got to have that barbecue rib, got to have that fat. And I was really frustrated about it. But I had a friend of mine who had also gone through a lot of that, and he had become a vegetarian himself. And he gave me a secret that really solved my problem. And I think spiritually it's a secret that can solve our problem of overcoming these demons in our life. And what he said to me was shocking at first to me. He says, what you got to do is you cannot just give up red meat. You got to give up all meat. No chicken, no pork, no duck. I didn't eat duck anyway. But none of that. Couldn't eat any of that stuff. He says, because any of that you eat makes you feel more like you want meat. So I tried it. I said, okay, I'll give up red meat. I'll give up pork. I'll give up all the other different kinds of meats, the chicken, whatever. And you know, it was an amazing thing. When I gave it all up, I was able to not be tempted by any of it. Okay? So you have to get rid of it all. You cannot just say, oh, I'm going to get rid of my sin of anger. I'm going to be fine on that. I'm going to get rid of that. Well, guess what? Then envy and jealousy and something else shows up over here. And you're just losing every time you try to do it. You cannot get rid of your demons one at a time. You got to get rid of all of them at one time. And that's why this story is so great, because that's what Jesus does. He doesn't try to heal that demoniac of one demon here and one demon there. He takes the whole bunch, and it must have been at least 2,000 demons, because there was 2,000 pigs, and lets all those 2,000 demons go at one time into the pigs and go jump in the lake and be gone. And that's how Jesus healed them, not one at a time, but all of them at one time. Now, what does that mean? What does that mean spiritually? It means that we need to learn in the new year, especially as we go forward, we need to learn to quit worrying about sins and start worrying about sin. Sounds like I said the same thing, but I didn't. Pay attention. Quit worrying about sins and start worrying about sin. S-I-N, capital S. You got to go to the source. If you're going to get rid of these demons, you got to go to the source, and you got to get rid of that source. You have to make that source go away. And in scriptural talk, we say you got to die to that source. Now, if the source of your demons is your own self, if the source of your demons is your own ego, mind, and heart, then what does that mean you got to do? You got to get rid of yourself. In Christianity, we say you got to die to yourself. You got to die to your ego. You got to die to your mind's concerns. You got to die to your heart's concerns. You got to die to all of that stuff. You've got to say, you are dead to me, ego. You are dead to me, mind. You are dead to me, because you are the source of every one of these demons that's ruining my life. You get rid of the source, you get rid of all the demons. And so it's very important for us to understand that little idea, that what we need to do is to focus for the remainder of this year and next year. We need to focus more on dying to our ego and self, so that we'll be empty. And if we are empty, the Spirit of Christ can live in us. See, that's what we're looking for. The more dead you are to yourself, the more alive Christ can be in you. So therefore, what we must keep in mind is that this is our real enemy, the dark forces of our own making that come from our own egotistical, mental way of wanting to run our life. You can't change that. People say, oh, I'm going to change people into better human beings. There really is no such thing as a better human being. It just doesn't work like that. What there is a dead human being that has come alive and become a new being. That's the whole idea of Christianity. We die to the human life and we rise up to the divine life. In this lifetime, in this place, in our relationships, in whatever else we do, that's what we do. We die to ourselves so that Christ can live in us, and that's how we get free from these demons. Well, I'd sum up today's message by asking one final question, and that is, now Jesus has come to set us free from our demons. And He's come to set us free from all of our demons at one time, to get rid of them all by encouraging us to follow Him into crucifixion. He said, take up your cross and follow me. It's not just Jesus that gets crucified. We talk about Him being crucified all the time, but somehow or another we just kind of forget to talk about us being crucified. I don't want to be no crucified. No, let Jesus be crucified. That's fine. He was the Son of God. He can handle it. But not me. No, not me at all. But that's the whole way it has to happen. Unless you die, you can't live. That's the whole point of the Christian faith. And Christmas is a time that we celebrate the coming of Jesus into our world to say that to us. You see, He can say it to us because He's human just like we are. That's hard for God to say it because He's all around everywhere, big voice, whatever. But Jesus is right here with us. A person can say to us right there, whoever loves his life is going to lose it, but whoever hates or is dead to his life will find it. You see? And He said it so clearly. And so this is all we need to remember here on this last Christmas Sunday before we move into the new year. Is what we really need to set as our goal is this idea of learning how to be more and more dead to ourselves so we can be more and more alive to the Christ who now lives in our world. I had us sing the song Joy to the World a few minutes ago, and when we sing that, the verse 3 is the one that I really love all the time, and I'm going to leave it with you once again. Back in my younger years, I was what was called a wordsmith. Nobody calls anybody a wordsmith anymore, but a wordsmith was somebody who wrote poems, lyrics to songs. I all the time pay attention to poems and lyrics, and that's why I love to sing hymns and carols. And I pay attention to the words. Music is great and it's wonderful, but it's those words that are so important. And the third verse of Joy to the World is the idea I want to leave with you here this morning. I don't know if you remember that third verse or not, but it expresses the joy we should feel when we realize that Jesus has come here to get rid of all of our demons, all of them at one time, not just one, but all of them, and to replace them with His own Spirit. And that verse says, No more let sin and sorrow grow, nor thorns infest the ground. Christ comes to make His blessings flow. And this is the great part. Far as the curse is found. Far as the curse is found. This is the good news. We are cursed as a human race because of our ego, mind, and heart. But it doesn't have to be that way. We can be free from that as far as it is found, regardless of what country it's in, regardless of where we are, regardless of who we are. That curse can go away. That's the great good news of Christmas. Joy to the world. That curse goes away as far as it is found, because Jesus has come into our world and He has said to the demonic in us, why don't you just go jump in the lake? Amen. Let us receive our benediction now. Now go forth out into this world with Christ in your hearts, and know you are not demonic, you are divine. Amen.